Hey guys, what's up? This is Free Nachos, and in this video we're going to go over the biggest pots that I've played in my entire poker career. A bunch of these will be at 10-20, and most of them will be some time ago. These days I mostly play 10-20, but I rarely play 25-50. The plan is when I move to Andorra in a couple of months to play more 25-50 and up, as I'll be able to deposit more freely. Having said that, let's see what we encounter. We're just going to go over the hands as if they were played yesterday, and we'll try to review them, maybe open an occasional sim or whatever. This seems relatively, well, standard. From our perspective, standard. We get a limper under the gun here. We ISO, I could ISO smaller here. I'm assuming I'm ISOing bigger because of player 54, who seems to be a recreational. We get it in here and we hold. Which is always good. The next one, I make a somewhat loose 3-bet here with Queen Jack. This is going to be in there at a low frequency, depending on the rake structure. But mostly this would just be a fold. I'm going to bet here. Turn, I block queens and jacks. I have a pretty good bluffing candidate. Also I have a queen of diamonds, which is going to function as a pretty good blocker on diamond runouts. So my guess is that this is going to be a high frequency, if not pure barrel on the turn here. Probably in practice I'm just going to pure barrel. I'm going with like, what is it, 2/3 here, roughly speaking, which I think is fine. It sets up for a reasonable river shove. And the river is the jack of diamonds. This is an interesting one. When we river a jack here on overcard, if this was the jack of spades, it would be a no-brainer. You just jam and villain will have to call. Like we're making some 10x indifferent, some 6x, some pocket pairs. But I think he mostly has to call his 10x here if I go in. And so it's just like any jack becomes a value shove. When it is a flush closing river, however, it becomes a bit closer because we are going to run into 6-7 suited, 6-5 suited, 10x suited. Occasionally ace queen suited, although we have the queen of diamond blocker, queen 10 suited. So yeah, like there's just going to be a bunch of hands that improve here, which obviously reduces the relative value of my river top pair. I'll pull up a sim in a sec to see what the threshold here is. With the queen of diamonds though, I think I'm like, obviously I bet, but I think betting is going to be okay here. With the queen of diamonds, without the queen of diamonds, I would be more inclined to check back, but we'll see what's up here. And he has pocket tens, so we lose a sizable pot of a little over $10,000. So what we're going to do is just pull up GTO Wizard real quick and see what's going on here. All right, so here we are with a GTO Wizard AI sim. You can see that we, in theory, need to mix. I simplified to a range bet of 50% of the pot, which will mean that our opponent is probably supposed to be check raising a fair bit more. And we're going to lose some EV. Let's see what the EV is if your opponent is hard countering you. This is fairly significant. Like this is, what is this, like 4%? So yeah, this is too significant. Like if you make this a bit more like a 10-4 deuce or something like that, where it's a bit drier and the 4 and the deuce aren't connecting as well with the out of positions cold call range, then you might be able to get away with this. But I think we're just losing a bit too much here. Like villain will need to check raise 60% in order for this to be as bad as it is. So in reality, we're going to probably lose significantly less, especially given the fact that there's like an 11% cold call, 11% call here, and our opponent called. So yeah, like chances are that he's not check raising everything basically. Having said that, what we'll do is we'll just change this and then change it back so that we actually get the normal sim, because we want our opponent to not check raise as much as he does. And we're just going to go with something that's a bit more reasonable. The queen jack off is betting quite often here. Slight preference for having a queen of clubs. I'm blocking some of the backdoors, I guess. So we are facing a call. And then the turn was the 3 of diamonds. And the first thing that I want to see is how often are my overcards barreling. Is my assumption that queen jack is going to be a good barrel in general, and then with a diamond it's going to be pure. Is that a correct assumption to make? Yeah, sort of, right? Like sort of. Like there's some, like there's the occasional jack of diamonds that is checking, but yeah, mostly we're just barreling when we have a diamond and we're checking when we don't have it, which is fine. We're just going to size down slightly because that's the sizing that we picked in game, I think. Still more or less the same. King Jack actually wants to bet a bit more. Let's see why that is. Usually the answer is in the defense, and you can see here Ace King is defending. I'm not sure how often it's in their full range hat. It's rarely in there. So, and Queens is not in there at all. As it's pure 4-betting out of position. Okay, that's reasonable. Okay, I can live with that. We face a call, and then the river is the Jack of Diamonds. There should be some leads here, I think. Yeah, so very small percentage of leads. as there is going to be some of these hands that we discussed, right? Like where you just have a very strong hand, but you could probably cut this out completely. Do we bet our queen jack? We bet our queen jack with the queen of diamonds. One thing that would be interesting though is what if we just remove the leading option here? Because a leading range, if there's a leading range, that leading range is always going to be stronger than the checking range, right? There's going to be some bluffs in there, but mostly it's going to be stronger than the checking range. And so if we remove the leading range, those hands in that stronger range are now being added to the checking range, and therefore if you remove the betting option, you just face a stronger checking range, which means that we might not go as thin. I don't think it's going to have like a massive difference here, but it might have a slight difference. So yeah, you can see we are still betting. It is 0.7. Yeah, kind of depending on the suits that we have, but depending on the suits that we have, it's just a little bit of EV, or like a reasonable amount, like 3 percent points. 4% points for a bet, so that seems good. And like I said, if I don't have the diamond, we are going to be checking. So in retrospect, I'm very happy with the way I played this. Although like you can see that king jack, ace jack are not necessarily betting, so it's not super consistent. Like having the diamond, it's somewhat consistent, which is fine enough. Like I can't, obviously, no one's going to be good enough to get these 100% correct. So yeah, cool. I'm content with this. I'm happy that I played it the way I did. And Villain is supposed to have some pocket tens here. And yeah, we just lost the pot. Happens, unfortunately, but we're still alive. Oh, so that one we already checked. Here I go ahead and 3-bet, which is somewhat standard. You could call as well, I think, but 3-betting is fine. I'm going for slightly bigger sizing as I'm going polar, but you could just go ahead and not do that. Let's see what we get. So I go for quarter pot, probably with range on this texture. It's a very disconnected texture and ace high, so sizing down generally makes a lot of sense, and you can probably just bet your entire range on a texture like this. We get a call. The king is a very good card for my range. I just have more of the higher cards in my range. I am going to have like a lot of draws to bluff though, like stuff like jack 10, queen jack, queen 10, hearts, diamonds, and then stuff like this. So I'll probably have to be somewhat selective, and it's relatively easy to just barrel too often with all of your draws. I think we're going to have to barrel this sometimes, because we want to have some bluffs when the river is like the queen of hearts or the queen of diamonds, I think. But I don't think this is pure. We'll see in a sim in a second, but I don't think this is a pure bet. I could be wrong, but it doesn't feel like it right now, because there's just more hands that have better equity. I do think we have a relatively high betting frequency, because the king is just pretty good for us. Like we have ace king, aces, kings, and our opponent does not. So fairly high betting frequency, but I'm not sure if this hand makes it in there pure. Obviously I did bet here as we're playing the biggest pot. And then on this river, I think we just have to go for it. It kind of sucks to be honest, but yeah, we just go in and hope he folds, which he did not. My opponent has ace queen, which he's not going to fold. I think we're probably in practice making ace queen indifferent is my guess, and at the very least like stuff like ace 10, ace 8, ace 5, ace 7, like stuff like that. But my perception here is that I don't really have that many bluffs, and so I need to bluff stuff like this occasionally, and I probably have to bluff some lower diamonds as well. It's an interesting hand. I'm just going to pull up a sim again, and then we'll just look at the results. Alright, so here we are with the GTO Wizard AI solve. We'll go ahead and remove the checking option here again to see what the EV loss is for range betting. I'm assuming it's sort of okay here. Yeah, so let's look at the EVs. Again, pretty significant. Like if I had known this, then it would definitely not have been range bet on my end. This is a fairly significant EV difference. And I think that the reason for this is that the fact that we just have so many random stuff in there, stuff that doesn't really hit this board as often. So makes sense. Like you can see, like we're not doing extremely well here. We're doing okay, but yeah, not extremely well. So need to be a bit more careful here. We will go ahead and add the checking option here again, so that we can pretend that we didn't range bet, so that we get like a normal response versus a small bet, which I think this is a more natural response by most players. We get a call, and then the king, like I said, I think we are going to do quite well on a king. Let's see, it's kind of annoying. What we're going to do is we are going to lock some strategies. So we're going to lock this, and then we are going to lock this, so that our opponent's strategy is just fixed, but our strategy is going to be a range bet, right? So what we're going to do here is just say, okay, we are going to lock everything, and what we should have right now, hopefully, is this, yeah, locked strategy. So now we can see Villain checks, faces a range bet, but is going to respond like he's facing a normal 25% bet. And one thing that we can do now is like look at the EV of these strategies. Let's see, let's go for strategy first. So now you can see like there's barely any EV loss if our opponent is playing a normal strategy, which you can't obviously, always have to take into consideration the fact that someone's picking up on your strategy, and especially at highly competitive games as the one that we were playing here. I think we need to take that into consideration, that there's a pretty big risk of range betting here. Having said that, we go ahead and do this. And the reason why I wanted to go for range bet is because we are then going to connect a bit better with a king, I think, because we are betting a bunch of our kings. Actually, kind of surprised by this, but okay. We will go ahead and lower this bet size, something that we actually used in-game. Somewhat surprising. I would have expected a higher betting frequency because I thought this would be a lot better. I think the main reason for this is the fact that we are in a wide formation and therefore just have so much junk in our range, especially if the range betting, which is something I didn't consider as much when I was playing in-game. If you have something like this in a tighter formation, let's say middle position versus early position, then your range just has mostly pairs, right? You just have either a pair of aces, a pair of kings, queens through jacks, and that is about it. There's the occasional queen jack, jack 10 type hand, and maybe some suited connector, but most of your range is a pair. Here, however, we have still a fair amount of unpaired hands, whereas our opponent probably has less of those. Yeah, so he has 12% of unpaired hands here, and we have 30% of unpaired hands. So I overestimated for sure in-game and then in the review later as well, the effect that this king would have on both players' ranges, especially after range betting. So I made in practice, minor mistake here. I should have checked these, because if we're not betting as often as I thought we would, right, then you're just not allowed to bet your weaker stuff as often. You're more interested in just picking stuff that has solid equity. So what we'll do, just for the sake of it, is we're just going to say that we have bet like 15% of the times with these two, so that we can see if a river bluff at least is not a massive punt. Now on the river, like you can see, if we have it, then we just have to bluff pure, even if we hold like the hearts. So at least the river, I read somewhat correctly. Although, like, obviously, if I barrel the turn much more often than I should with my entire range, then I might just end up having too many weak hands here, and I might, end up still over bluffing. Having said that, a little bit unlucky, but I definitely misplayed it a little bit as well. Villain is supposed to call ace queen and it's pure, and then ace 10 is the indifference point, which kind of makes sense given the fact that we should have a lot of strong hands here. Cool, nice. One other thing to consider, by the way, is in practice a lot of players, including myself, will probably have a less polar 3-betting range, which does change the complete structure of the entire spot, because we're just not going to have as many of these suited stuff here and like the chunky stuff here, and we're just going to have a few more of these. But having said that, that is still not a sufficient reason to play the hand like I did, and I think I definitely made some mistakes here, looking back at it, which is fine. Like all we do basically is make mistakes. The one that makes least mistakes is going to win most. Squeeze seems fine. We get jammed on. This is not a happy situation. I remember this hand. I want to say, is this the hand? This is, if he has ace queen, then this is a very big punt by my opponent. And I think this guy's a famous streamer, or somewhat famous streamer. He has played these games more than I have, I think. I won't say his name because I don't want to give the impression that I'm talking shit here, which obviously I'm not. I don't know the guy. If anything, he seems like, from the videos that I've seen, like a very nice, cool guy. So if you see this hand yourself and you remember this hand, hope you don't take any offense. This is, however, a pretty gigantic punt on his end. To be fair, like I said, like in the previous hands we've seen that I already made some mistakes, and I've definitely made some mistakes myself, which makes me think of a story. I once got coached by Matt Marinelli when I was in Detox. He was playing a lot higher than I was, and I hired him to do some private coaching for me. And I remember him doing a database review. So he went over a bunch of hands of mine, and one of the hands I open shoved queens. And he said, I found this hand. It was kind of weird, but I'm assuming it was a misclick. And I said, it was a misclick, but I actually had like lost the stack prior, and I was doing this fake tilt while actually being semi-tilted thing. And so I open jammed there. So yeah, just reiterate that everyone makes mistakes. Keep forgetting that I have to go the other way. All right, so this is an interesting one. He goes for a larger sizing, which might make sense on this texture. I think like going smaller is more standard, but it is relatively connected and two-tone, so you might be able to get away with this. I'm not entirely sure. The turn is a queen, and we see barrel. We are going to click call here. And then on a 10 of clubs, I'm thinking whether I should have some leads here. We're going to have some for sure, but I'm not entirely sure how many. Because we're going to have some ace X of clubs that is going to call. We are going to have some king jack, jack 10, jack 9, stuff like that. So there will definitely be some leads. I'm not entirely sure how many. Anyway, let's look at what's happening. He jams and we just have to call here. I can't remember whether I won this hand or not. It's hard to find bluffs here, but yeah, we'll just hope that he has one or that we somehow win. Interesting. Curious to see if this is going to be a jam on his side, whether we should be playing our hand any different, specifically leading the river. So I'm going to pull up a sim real quick to confirm that, and then yeah, we'll see. All right, so here we are with the sim. We can see that villain picked the correct sizing. I just want to see real quick, like what would be the EV loss if we just go for a smaller sizing here. I'm assuming it's more or less the same EV. So yeah, losing 1% of the pot. Well played by my opponent. We go back to 2/3, and then it was the queen of spades, queen of spades. So actually, we should be raising sometimes here. I'm calling sometimes as well, which is fairly standard. No leads here, obviously. And then on the turn, our opponent went ahead and roughly, what is this? 3/4 again, and pure call. Nice. So the goal of this is not necessarily to go over the entire hand and try to see if we played it quote unquote correctly. It's more so trying to understand how ranges interact. So for instance, like, do we have leads here? I thought we would have leads here, and we actually do have leads. In fact, we actually have some all-in leads, which is something that I would not have guessed. I'm guessing if we just cut out the all-in lead, we're not going to lose a massive amount of EV. But you can see like we have some of these that want to go for it. Our hand doesn't really want to go for it. And it's more so some stronger flushes, and then like some straights are going to go into the block sizing a bit more, particularly when they have a flush blocker, I'm imagining. Yeah, sort of, I guess. Not really. Nice. So we do have some leads, and then this is interesting, right? Because early in the video we said if we don't have these leads, then the in-position player will end up betting less often. He's already like not allowed to bet very often to begin with. For what it's worth, only 20, what is it, 27%? I don't want to lock everything, and if I just remove the leading options here, what's going to happen is that we are going to potentially call a different range versus the second barrel on the turn, because well, the solver realizes, hey, if I call these hands that are EV plus in equilibrium, I can't jam them or I can't lead them on the river ever, because we don't get that option, and therefore it might basically change the entire tree before this a little bit. I don't think it will be a massive difference, but I don't want to lock everything prior to this because it's kind of a pain in GTO Wizard AI. So what I'm going to do is just remove these and then see what happens, and assume that it's far from perfect, but sort of still gives me an idea. You can see like now it's 17%, and let's see, what did he have? Like Jack 8, I think, which we shouldn't have for whatever reason. And mostly it's just going to go pot. All in is going to be too big. Let's look at Jack 7. The difference between, oh sorry, it's 3/4 actually. 3/4 and all in is like, what is it? 2.3 big blinds. So pretty significant. All in is just a bit too much. And if he goes all in, yeah, we call flushes always. Straights are indifferent, which kind of makes sense. And that's about it. So yeah, like the goal here is to get an understanding of how ranges interact. Should I have a leading range? So sort of stress testing the assumptions that I have in game. This type of work, I rarely just like look at it from a perspective of, okay, Finnish should have been doing this, or I should have been doing whatever. It's more so, how do ranges interact? What do I expect my opponent has to do? What if he doesn't do that? What if I don't do what I'm supposed to do? And then sort of try to understand, like I said, how the ranges interact on a specific texture. Here, I finally win a hand, which is nice. Here, getting 3-bet, we are always going to 4-bet with ace king suited, I think, and then like going to call some ace king offsuit. We get it in. It seems like we are doing okay. Queen doesn't feel too good, but luckily we still win. Oh yeah, that missed that one. Should go the other way around. 3-betting, getting 4-bets, almost jamming here. Why I'm not 100% jamming, I'm not sure. This is a couple years ago. We just get it in. I should have just jammed here. I'm not sure that this is. I'm assuming that this is non-intentional, and if so, then it doesn't make any sense at all. Should just go all in or call. Call is a very reasonable option as well, but I think we can go all in sometimes. We roll it 3 times. We win all 3. Do we win all 3? I think we do. Seems like it. Nice. 6-7. Going to 3-bet is sometimes call, sometimes. Interesting spot. I vaguely remember this hand. I'm not entirely sure though. I feel like I punted massively here. I go ahead and bet half pot. I'm probably going to be betting too often here, and like the correct exploit to that is probably overfold slightly pre-flop and then do this quite often and just put me in a world of pain with a bunch of the hands that don't really want to bet. The hands more in the middle of my range, which is kind of whatever. But here we are. Seeing this card, I think I won the hand. Oh wow. Oh, I remember this. This is horrible, I think. This is horrible. This is horrible. This is horrible. Yeah, I think this is horrible. I could see us jamming some jack 10, 9, 10, potentially. Some ace-x of spades. But I think this is going to be a pretty big mistake. And luckily we win. Fill in at queens and yeah, we just... Yeah, I think we just... From like a theoretical perspective, we probably shouldn't be jamming this hand. I could be wrong, but... I don't think we're getting called by weaker stuff often enough to justify this, and we can just call. We get a reasonable price. Interesting spot. Like obviously we are sort of in the jungle after he picks a line that's somewhat non-standard, and now goes half pot on the turn. But I think this has to be a punt. It feels like it is a punt at least. I'm going to check it so we have an answer. I don't think it's worth that much because it won't ever happen again, and normally I could see myself skip this. But yeah, we'll pull up a sim and then we'll see. Right, so here we are at the sim. We can see we are betting relatively often. One of the reasons is the fact that both players' ranges are relatively tight, and so I am going to have a big portion of my range is just going to be very strong hands, and there's not going to be that much random stuff in there. We just have like a reasonable range advantage. Ferdinand has some more 6 and 8s, which obviously puts him into the advantage near the top of the range, but in the grand scheme of things, we're doing just really well. Half pot and finish shouldn't ever raise here. We will just give him like a min raise so that it happens sometimes, and maybe we can just play around with it so that we, yeah, so what we'll do is we'll just say that we range bet, which is going to be a mistake, but then at least we get some raises here. Still not fair, not a lot, like even if you range, if you min raise. All right, so we will just go ahead and do this, and basically we end up with a lot of random stuff. We should be jamming some 7-6. I'm guessing doing quite okay, like getting some folds by stronger hands or something like that. Yeah, so queens is supposed to fold in equilibrium. I don't think queens is folding in practice. And then we get called by weaker hands sometimes, like king, queen of spades, some ace, 10 of spades. Yeah, this is just a solver thing that doesn't really happen in practice. At this point, I can tell you, like this sim is pretty much useless because both players' ranges are already so far from what they should be that it doesn't make any sense. We should have some lead jams though, which again I would have never found. We're just going to say villain is doing this, and yeah, like I said, the sim is kind of useless, so I won't yeah, put too much weight on it. But yeah, this seems to be somewhat okay. Oh yeah, so this is a bomb pot. So this must be WPM. I have no idea how to play this. I'm pretty sure that this might be a mistake. Although it would depend a little bit on, like, would depend a lot, I think, on who are sitting behind. Like if there's some massive will, then betting might be a bit better. I think out of position, I just want to check. Like if I were to play this today, what is this? Like almost 3 years ago, if I were to play this there, I would check. I can't see that betting here is like when there's like 5 players. The calling ranges collectively of those 5 players are going to be relatively tight, even though everyone has 100% of their range. I think like if you just have a weak queen like this, you just check out of position. Maybe if everyone checks to you, you might want to bet, but I don't think this is a thing. I jam here. I have no idea. Like there might be some will that justifies this, because I'd like to think that 2 years ago I would have been good enough to understand that we probably don't want to take this line. But having said that, who knows, right? And he has 3-9, and not too surprisingly, we get it in, well, behind here. And this is horrible. This is not good. I would have much preferred to go on a holiday with this money rather than just do something like this. Not good at all. Like there's just no excuse here. This is just really bad. I hope that the next hands are going to be a little bit better, because that one was, I won't say as bad as like the ace queen one where the streamer punted into us, but it comes relatively close. Well, we might even argue it's a bit worse. Anyway, here we are doing quite well. We get check raised here. I think there shouldn't be too many check raises, to be honest. And the reason is that on trip boards, it is as close as you playing the pre-flop range as possible. Like obviously if the 3 jacks, then those interact with both players' ranges somewhat. If it's 3 deuces, then it's literally pre-flop range versus pre-flop range, just less cards to run. But I would think that this doesn't get raised very often. Maybe I'm wrong. Like I could be way off there. I definitely think I can range bet, and like, there might be some queens that wants to raise actually, and maybe 10s, 9s, 8s, 7s want to raise at some frequency. So I'm not saying no raises, but I could see this being a very low check raising frequency for the out of position player. Again, I could be wrong. I have studied trip sports about 0 hours. So yeah, I could be wrong here. Here we are just going to call down. If he has a jack, he has a jack. He's going to have queens, 10s, 9s, I'm assuming, but most likely hand is going to be queens or some suited jack or something like that. His queens. Feels like, yeah, maybe it's fine. Maybe to be fair, like he's going to, yeah, like probably this is fine. I'm going to have lower pairs, and I'm like assuming something like ace king becomes indifferent here from my perspective with this amount of money left. Yeah, I think this is fine. Like I actually think this is fine from his perspective. Let's take a quick look at the sim. Right, so here we are with the sim. We are betting our entire range. We actually get to bet slightly larger than the smallest sizing. We can see that we are just, throughout the entire range, we are doing better, which was to be expected. I'm just curious to see how big of a check raising frequency. On pair textures there's a lot of check raising, so I could just be completely wrong, but it feels like a spot where a position player doesn't want to have as many check raises. Wow, I'm impressed with myself there. Because obviously I haven't looked at trip, like I said, I haven't looked at trip boards ever, so that's cool. So he shouldn't really have a check raising range, which means that, yeah, we are looking at noise here. Yeah, like we could like do something like this where we give him like a very low amount of check raise, but that doesn't make any sense. Like at this point, like we can just conclude that probably what he was doing doesn't make too much sense, and our opponent made a mistake instead of us, which is good. We are never going to fold, so that's not. Yeah, there's no debate in that. Cool, so here I went ahead and check raised. I remember this hand. I think I did. I do. I'm not sure. If this is what I think happens, yeah, I think this has to be a mistake on my end, because I jammed here. This is not a jam. I used to put a lot more faith in data than I do now, or at least I used to take a more, I guess, a simpler approach, mostly because I wasn't as good as a player as I am today. Today I try to mix theory with data, and yeah, this was before the time, and yeah, we shouldn't have jammed here. Like we are blocking folds primarily king 10 of spades, king jack of spades, king queen of spades, king 7 of spades, king 8 of spades are probably calling the check raise on the flop. So like a lot of hands that are going to call fold, we block here, and therefore I think we just aren't allowed to do this. And sizing is probably okay throughout the hand. Yeah, the sizing seem okay. The hand is just not good. Most of these, like I said, like this again is like 3 years ago, roughly. So we'll pull up a sim again and try to see if we can learn anything, or whether I against all odds I might be able to still bluff here, but we'll see. Oh, this is not check. This is 9-9-6. So my hand is not even a check raise on the flop. We just are going to raise more hands that connect with the 9-6 region, which I can't fold my. Yeah, I wouldn't today. I wouldn't check raise this hand. That's for sure. But yeah, I also don't think it's horrible. EV loss is relatively small. It's just that you have so much stuff that wants to raise that. Yeah, you kind of want to raise check 7 over this, which makes a lot of sense to me. Just going to cheat a little bit and say that we have like a low frequency of raises there with these hands, and then we just at least get to see whether our play makes sense. So on the turn, I think we just want to go to E, meaning we just want to get it in over turn and river, and we want to pick the same bet size, relatively speaking, on each street. So I think like slide over bet would be preferred. It's actually 3/4, which is a bit surprising to me. And not betting very often. Kind of makes sense. We're not calling, like we're not raising very often with aces, but our opponent does call quite often. So I'm not surprised that we are not betting at a very high frequency. I am a little bit surprised that this is not like 2E. I'm just going to see what 2E would be and what the EV loss would be. Maybe we just don't bet. Yeah, we just almost bet off range checking. King 5, however, is a good bet on the turn. I'm just going to see like what is the EV loss. I'm assuming pretty much nothing. Yeah, okay, so that makes sense. We went with 90% of the pot though, like 85 or something like that. The bluffs that we are going to find here are 7, 8, like hands that don't have spades or lower spades. As lower spades don't block as many of the call folds. Like if you have, let's say we have something like 7, 5 of spades, then we are blocking some 7, 6 that is calling. Well, it might be folding by the river, who knows. But we block some of these, we block some of these. If you have the kings, then you're blocking a fair bit more, I think. Is that true? Who knows, we'll see. 2, and then king 5 is actually jamming sometimes, which is a bit surprising to me. Let's see what our jams are. Oh wait, there's some low pair in here, which is jamming some. Oh, we don't have that. Okay, that makes sense. Okay. I would have expected this to bluff more than that. And quite surprising that all in is a thing here, to be honest. Yeah, if you just go all in, then it looks completely different. And this kind of makes more sense to me, where you're just blocking, like, so here, these ones make a lot of sense, right? You're just unblocking some call folds in positions range, and that's going to be like all of these, right, are going to call fold. So king queen is even calling. But all of these are flush draws, and you want to block as few of them as possible. So there's a fair amount of kings in here, but not as many that have a 7 in them, right? Or even lower. Anyway, so like I can see myself like jamming these always, and 8-7 always, 7-5 without spades always. So we don't really jam spades. Like that's kind of the thing here. And this seems like more accurate, more reasonable. Like this is more consistent with what I know to be true. So here we definitely costed ourselves some money. Like curious to see what the EV loss is for a hand like king 5. So you can see it's relatively small, right? It's not like you punted away 80 big blinds or 70 big blinds or whatever. It's just like 2 big blinds. But still 2 big blinds is fairly significant, and we should just check and give up. This was probably one of the first times that I played 25-50, I reckon. So I think in part it was like data showed this to be overfolded by the river if you went 2x here. And so I just thought, well, we just take the overfold. Now I wouldn't do that. Now I would be bluffing all my indifferent bluffs pure here. And maybe I would overbluff with something like 7-5 over something like this. Yeah, so I just took like the data at face value and knew that this was probably not the best bluff, but also, yeah, was taking like a more inaccurate approach, I guess. Interesting spot. There should be a tiny bit of leads here, I think, by the in-position player. Why do I go for an overbet? What's going on here? That seems not good. Why do we go for an overbet here? Oof. Again, this is like 2 years ago. 3 years ago, actually, almost. Like yeah, almost 3 years ago. If he has a set, yeah, I'm not even sure what I'm doing here. And to be fair, like in my defense, I hadn't. Okay, I was playing 25-50. My theoretical, as we can see, my theoretical understanding of the game was quite poor. I hadn't really studied c-betting as much as I should have, although I feel like I was better than this. I'll be completely honest, this seems like ridiculous. Yeah, this is more of a check than an overbet, I think, given the fact that he should have some leads. We'll pull up a sim and I will just show you that this is just really, really bad. It's kind of a little bit embarrassing to be having to show you these hands, but we are here now and we might as well just take it on the chin. 7-6, 9-7-6. So my guess is going to be low frequency lead for small sizing by the out of position player, maybe something like 20% frequency, and yeah, definitely no overbets on my side of the game tree. So it's a bit more. Oh wait, yeah, still a bit more. 38% frequency. Is that correct? Oh, this is spades. Okay. 28. So like, yeah, okay, reasonable. We face a check, and we're just going to go with, like, I would go with half pot now, which is going to be fine in position on most low textures. There might be some exceptions, but just going half pot is fine. Just go for 1.5x overbet, just to show you that it like is just an inefficient sizing. You're just going to bet this frequency. You're going to bet our hand like occasionally, but it's just yeah, I don't know, man. I'm not even sure why. Like, I'm making checks in different here. It's just really bad. There's nothing else to say. It's just really bad. Like, it's 3 years ago, and yeah, but like even 3 years ago, I should have known better here. I'm not sure what I was doing, where I was like tilting slightly or something like that, or but I just wanted to do something cool here. I've known that there's a small chance that this is a recreational, and then it becomes better, I think. Like, then he's just going to put in too much money with hands that really shouldn't be putting in money. Stuff like, I don't know, like a 9. He's going to have more 9s to begin with. He might flick it in with pocket 5s or 6-5 or something like that. But even then, like, it's probably better to just go and size slightly smaller. Let's see if we can actually find a HUD here and hope that we get to see. So it seems like this might have been the recreational. Like, this is makes me feel a little bit better about my line, actually. First rec, that makes it a bit more. I could see myself playing it like this versus recreational, and even today I think it might be okay, because he's just going to put in too much money here. There's an overbet. Like, he is not supposed to fold flush draws, which is kind of sad. That would have been something. But yeah, he's, like I said, he's going to have more random 9x, random 8x that is going to call here or put too much money in. So I, versus a recreational, I don't hate this as much. I still think I would go smaller, but yeah, whatever. So we'll just say that this was a recreational, so I don't feel too bad about myself, but it definitely doesn't deserve the any. I won't get any prizes for playing with hand like that. Interesting hand. He goes half pot. I'm just going to see if this is the same guy. Is this the same table? Is this a different? No, this is a different table, I think, right? Yeah, it's a different table, different side as well. Oh wait, so let's see the HUD at least, so we can see. Seems like this was the recreational. So let's just assume that it was first the recreational. First the recreational, I like raising more, which is what I do here, I think. Versus a rec, I think my 9 deuce is actually okay as a call. And we need to have some 2 pairs that call, and I think 9 deuce is going to be a better call than 4 deuce, which unblocks top pairs, and so will be a bit better to call. And 4-9, which has more equity, so that would be my way to simplify it a little bit. Also, diamonds don't make a flush ever, whereas if I have 4 deuce of spades, then even if I'm behind now, I get to, or like my opponent has 9-7 and he outdraws me, I might sometimes make a flush, and that is worth a little bit extra. I go for pot sizing here, which reiterates the fact that I think this is a recreational. I vaguely remember this. I think this was like a very big recreational, and I had like a very good table, and I won like a lot in the beginning of the session. I think I streamed this one in the team even. I think I just like ran very bad towards the end versus the Recreational, because this guy was just complete lunatic. I think he won here. Like he might have had 9-7. 9-7 I think he has. Yeah. So I just get a bit unlucky here. This was the Recreational. So versus Recreational, I think I played it fine. You just get it in, and he's going to get it in with aces, kings, queens, jacks, tens, some random nines sometimes. And if he's a complete lunatic, he's going to flick it in with all sorts of stuff. So unfortunately, I lose a big hand there, but that's fine. This hand I remember as well. This was versus Recreational as well, and I think I looked at this hand later, and it was relatively close without spades. But folding. I think that was the solution. I need to win like 38% here. Like he's going to sometimes jam weaker hands, right? So 7-6 suited, 8-7 suited, 8-6 suited, Jack-9. That is definitely going to happen sometimes. He's going to jam a random queen, versus which I'm doing okay. A random 10 versus which I do okay. I think in theory this is a fold. Let's just see something like this it was, and we'll go with the effective stake size of like 83, I think it was, something like that. 74, okay, so even a bit less. Obviously, the lower the SPR there is, the more likely it is that we can get it in. I remember timing down to the last second and then deciding that I just call here and run it. I think like you can just very well take the approach of Queen 10-4, of just folding your hand here. Because it's unclear whether it's profitable. I think like in hindsight, I think it's not profitable, if I had to guess. Like, it's kind of nonsensical to look at it like this, because even if we force out of position to only use a jam sizing when he raises, which like is obviously then still his range is not going to look at all like this. So like make of this what you will. It doesn't really make too much sense, but let's see versus an equilibrium shove what I should be doing here. We don't have King Jack offsuit. We have the other ones and they're losing quite a bit. But yeah, in that case, villain is never jamming something like this, which I thought in game, like given the fact that it was a pretty big will, that might happen occasionally, and we're obviously ahead of that. So I don't know. Like I think this is a fold. Like if I have one spade, I might be able to get there because we have some extra equity and we unblock some of villains out. Sometimes I think if we have something like, I don't know, like ace X of spades, we're never folding. So yeah, I think this is a mistake, but I ended up folding here. I don't think it's as bad as it seems. Versus this hand, I would have had like, what is it? I have like 8 outs plus 3, so 11 outs. So yeah, I get pretty close versus this hand, even. I think I versus this hand. If he tells me I have ace queen, I might need to call. Anyway. What is this? Did we? Oh yeah, it was that hand. Okay, yeah, we're getting there. Oh yeah, and this is the final hand, I think. Is this the final hand? Yeah, this is the final hand. Nice. This is my biggest pot ever. Luckily, it's not this one. Spoiler alert. I won this one. This was versus a rack that I've played with a lot when he was playing 1K. Now plays more 5K. I played millions of hands at GG 1K. I think it's a good regular. I respect this game, and yeah, we just go bet. And then on the river, I remember saying in stream something like, "Oh, please don't snap." And then I jammed, and he snapped within a microsecond. So I was like, "Oh, that can't be good." But luckily, he just turned ace queen, and we won the big spot. And this I simmed, and this was just fine. So this was the biggest spot that I've played. You can see here that there are a fair amount of mistakes in both players, like at 25-50 and up here. I've made a fair amount, and my opponents have made a fair amount of mistakes in like these bigger pots. Obviously, there's like there's some bias here because there's not a lot of hands where I just go bet small on the flop and it's just fine, and someone folds and it's just fine. A lot of these hands are bigger pots, and generally they're a bit more complex because you go a bit deeper in the game tree and yeah, are just more prone to making mistakes. Anyway, if you guys have any questions, comments, whatever, drop them down in the comments below. Feel free to join our free Discord server. I'm hanging around every day there, so happy to see you there, and talk to you guys soon. Bye.